go. I'm going to show you how I make my metal roses. There's a bunch of different techniques online. You know, I kind of saw different ways of it being done. That's kind of what I came up with. I'm sure it's not original, but it's kind of the easiest way for me. Starts out with single petals. I used to always cut these out by hand, and it was a bitch. It took forever. After I sold probably 50 or 60 roses, I found a local company here in town that has a plasma table where they can just laser them all out, and it was real cheap. It was cheap enough. I'm basically just buying the sheet metal and then they're cutting it out for me, which I wish I would have done it a long time ago, because like I said, I at least did 50 or 60 roses where I hand cut each petal, and there's 10 to 15 petals per rose, so I mean, do the math, that's a shitload of cutting. But anyways, it starts out with 5 petals, arranged. You just do it symmetrical. I've tried it with 4, I've tried it with 6, it just seems to look a lot better with 5 whenever you get it all done. What we do is we get them all matched up, and we're going to weld them together. And whenever you weld them, you always got to make sure you leave a hole in it whenever it's fully welded, because that's how we stack each section on top of each other. So let's get her tacked real quick. Oh, it's not moving yet. Have each section welded together. Like I said, 5 petals welded together. We are going to stack them up. Take 2 of them, match them up real good to where they, they're in the same, basically they're symmetrical again. And now you see why we left that open, so you can get your weld down in there and pull it up real good and join them together. At least that's the plan. Sometimes it doesn't always work out. Just like that. And I'll usually flip it over and hit it again on the bottom or the top, whichever it ends up being, just to make sure it's completely welded. You don't want them to come apart, which I have seen happen. I'm going to tap this real quick. Now what you can't see is my anvil. What I do is sometimes whenever I get the weld going while it's still hot, I'll hit it with the anvil, bring it back down, kind of flatten it. That way my weld isn't getting too thick. And next, we have the stems, which 1/4 inch round bar, 3/8 inch round bar, just whatever you want to use. Put that bad boy right on the bottom. Let's do this side. No, drop my board. Now we have our rose. It's basically flattened out. It's all attached. I'm doing 10 petal roses right now. They just seem to be a little bit cleaner. Sometimes I do 15s. I'm basically just doing 10s because I want to do 10s right now. No reason, no rhyme or reason. And let me show you how we bend it. Need that. hitting it and forming them. Let me show you how we do that. Start with pulling them all up, or the top layer up, just the top layer. You don't pull them all up, obviously. Just the top layer, and then we got to kind of start forming them. Basically, on this inner layer, we just kind of got to get them, pretty much just get a fold in them so that they'll start stacking on top of each other. The outer layer, you have to be a little bit more creative, kind of make it, you know, form it a little bit better. As far as the inner layer, you're pretty much just fold it so it gets, can fold in on side of each other, start stacking on top of each other, rather. All right. Now, you can kind of see it starting to form. We still have them where they were, just bent over basically. We're going to start hitting down on them so that they can start peeling on each other. With this first layer, or whatever you want to call it, first section of rows, you got to get those real tight to where there's basically no gap here in the middle. Shouldn't be hot. Pretty good right there. I'd like it to be in a little bit more, but I think I can form it. I can get it to close in a little bit more when I start beating on these. So, the outside layer, we do the same thing we did before. I'll try and do it right here so you can see it. Just bend them and fold them in. Kind of start shaping them with the hammer. Trying to do it so the camera can see it. Not just keep blocking the camera the whole goddamn video. There we go. That's not too bad. Now let's start hammering it again. Also, I have people ask all the time, and you can probably tell because I'm hitting it with a 4-pound sledge or whatever, a 3.5-pound sledge. I make my roses out of 18 gauge metal, which is pretty damn thick. A lot of the ones I see online, people are making them out of like 20 and 22, which is, you know, real thin. I've seen them all the way up to 24 and 26, which is basically pop can, you know, thinness, which it's okay. I mean, it's metal. It's not like it's going to rust any. I kind of like them a little bit thicker because they look a little bit thicker when you look down on them. It doesn't look like it's paper thin, you know, kind of like it's cheap. You can tell it's actually a pretty heavy piece of metal, which, I don't know, it doesn't really matter either way. I just kind of like it a little bit more. And also, the thicker metal, it doesn't warp or wave as much when you weld it. And also, if this was thin metal, every time I hit it, I'd start having hammer marks all over it. So it seems like with the thinner metal roses, whenever I see them, other people doing them, they just look like they're beat all to hell because the metal's so thin. So I kind of like, if you're going to do it, you know, you're already going to have time in doing it. You might as well do it right and make it out of 18 gauge. There we go. That's probably going to be good for this one. And then it looks like, kind of a little trick I like to do, it looks like this one kind of shifted on me when I welded it. So it's just barely off center. So I always like to put a curve in the stems anyway. So what I like to do is on those off center ones is I'll just curve it along with the off center so it almost looks like I meant to do it. You know, play it like I know what I'm actually doing. There you go. See now, even though that was an off-center one, like I said, I actually kind of fucked up on it. Whenever the bend comes in, it even looks even better that it is off-center. So it looks like I meant to do it, when in reality I absolutely did not mean to do it, but it worked out. So okay, so now it's time to put the bases on the flowers. We already made the flower and the stem. We just gotta have somewhere to put it. Not everybody that buys them wants a base. Some people like to put them in a vase. Which is cool. It makes it even easier when you sell them. Most of them, though, I'd say 90% of them have bases. Use this one. All we got to do is grind it and weld it. Pretty simple. I get it semi-straight, even though it's crooked. There you have it. There's our rose that we made on film. Let's bring this bad boy over here. Check it out. I'll add some pictures at the end. Looks a little bit better whenever it's all cleaned up. Basically what we got left to do is just hit all this with the wire wheel so it's all cleaned up and bare metal, and you can clear coat it or paint it, whatever you want to do. I got a red candy I usually like to paint over them, where they kind of brings the metal flake out a little bit, or brings the bare metal out actually, because the real thin candy, it kind of works with the grain of the, like your sand scratches on the petals. It looks neater than hell. But I'll add some pictures of that at the end. But there she is. Thanks for watching.